We've read your comments, we've watched the forums, we've creeped in the background of all the social pages, and we've seen what mods people think are the most valuable or important to them. Portal axles, double light bars, duck landing pads. Today, we're breaking down and ranking the top 10 mods as determined by our Jeep family, what they believe are the best mods in the industry. Hey Jeep family, my name is Neil with SFJ4x4.com, Simpson Family Jeeps. We are going to be breaking down the modifications that you, the Jeep people, believe are the most valuable. As industry professionals with a focus on functionality, we sometimes get caught up in our own perspective and arguably focus in on high grade performance modifications. And realistically, individuals who are flocking to the interwebs every day and jumping on the social pages and the forums are oftentimes celebrating more minor or interesting modifications that they themselves are doing and making their Jeep uniquely theirs. And so today, this top 10 ranking is devoted to you, our viewers and followers, and the modifications that you determined have been the most valuable in your Jeep experience. Now, we are going to be breaking them down in some of the pros and cons and ranking them in what we believe to be a functional manner. But with that said, hold on, buckle up, and enjoy the ride as we break down the top 10 modifications our Jeep family has determined are the best. Number 10. The best top Sunrider for hardtop. The Sunrider gives you an open air experience and feel of a soft top without actually having to draw back the entirety of the soft top. Additionally, it gives you an added degree of security because of the hard top surrounds and ease of use based on the ability to just flip it back versus fully removing the freedom panels. While this is a highly functional modification, and if you are not interested in flipping back your freedom panels or mobility might be a challenge, or you're really looking for that kind of single motion from your driver or passenger seat utilization, it makes sense. However, for me on a personal level, I find it to be kind of an odd mix of not quite committing to a soft top and not fully committing to a hard top. You might find this to be the best of both worlds, whereas I'd rather just strip the top off in its entirety or have a hard top installed in its completeness. Regardless, many people claim that the Sunrider soft top insert is a great modification to their everyday use of the Jeep, and I do see where it has the ability to benefit a large population of Jeep owners. If you think it would be a good modification for you, I would recommend professional installation because it can be a little cumbersome, and if installed correctly, it will have a very long lifespan. The biggest drawback that I hear about it is limited functionality and unfortunately a short lifespan, but that in my opinion is typically due to improper initial installation or care and storage after it has been officially installed or removed or so on and so forth over the lifespan of that particular insert. The biggest criticism that I am aware of regarding this particular soft top insert, in my opinion, can be specifically traced back to improper initial installation or care thereof once it has been installed, removed, or fully utilized over its lifespan while on your Jeep. They are capable of a good long life if you are using them correctly. If you're looking for that complete open air experience, this probably isn't for you. But if you are in potentially a more urban setting where you're just looking to have a little fresh air on your commute in, then park in a parking garage or outdoor parking space or somewhere where you feel you need a further security of your vehicle, then it's a great modification. Number 9, upgraded headlights. Now, if you've watched many of my videos, you'll know that I am highly critical of the multitude of headlights that the market offers. Better visibility overall means a safer driving experience on and off road. So I fully support if you feel that your headlights in whatever configuration they are insufficient for your ability to safely see, then I will always support a headlight upgrade. Well, with that said, there are performance-driven headlights, and then there are fun, color-changing, interesting headlights, and they rarely cross over. As a functional upgrade, headlights make sense. First and foremost, if you have done any other suspension or tire wheel package modifications to your vehicle, then I recommend that you ensure that your headlights are appropriately aimed and focused in such a way that is safe and conscientious of other drivers on the road. Secondly, in the process of upgrading your headlights, look for a headlight that prioritizes upgraded lighting technology. From brighter bulbs or focused LED chips, performance-driven headlights accentuate one's ability to illuminate and focus those light patterns in a way that makes sense for you, the driver. More affordable alternatives, unfortunately, don't always take the same care and consideration to your user experience. Instead, they prioritize the flash or the fun nature of a attractive looking headlight or fun color changing LEDs. And so ultimately, you don't get that same high quality user experience. Expect to pay a pretty penny. The days of affordable lighting upgrades are far gone. Realistically speaking, you get what you pay for. Better performance is simply going to cost more. The engineering and care that go into those performance headlights is what you are paying for. And ultimately, if you're purchasing a knockoff variation, while you might get a good enough light pattern, the production quality might be lesser, the lifespan may be shorter, and they may or may not be DOT approved, and therefore they may actually be illegal for your use on the road. So while I 100% agree that quality lighting technology is a valuable upgrade, keep in mind, pay now or pay later, but you always pay, and realistically, fun and performance don't typically go hand in hand in one lighting package. You're going to need to choose what your priority is. Number 8, wheel spacers and adapters. Now, realistically, as an industry, we use the word spacers, but technically the most commonly used products are in fact wheel adapters, not in the sense that they change or adapt your bolt pattern from one to another, but in the fact that you have a mechanical attachment to another mechanical attachment. In the grand scheme, this might seem like kind of nominal minutia that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to the average enthusiast. But when it comes to splitting hairs with local legalities and potential safety inspections, wheel adapters are used every day in the original equipment market and therefore are road legal, whereas spacers oftentimes are not. These wheel spacers allow you to gain a wider stance, which ultimately means more stability on and off road. Additionally, more room for your steering angles if you have upgraded wheels and tires. And in some situations, it can allow you to cross-purpose one model's wheel and tires to another. So if you are the owner of a small body Jeep, YJ, TJ, XJ, MJ, ZJ, so on and so forth, you could then also take a quality set of JK or JL or JT wheels and tires and put them on your rig. This utilization across our platforms is awesome, and it makes for a affordable and arguably safe installation and upgrade. There are limited downsides at this point. There was at one time an argument about impurity and out of round manufacturing of these wheel spacers. Additionally, the vernacular conversation of spacer versus adapter when it comes to communicating with your local mechanic or DOT authorities. Additionally, there are those who would argue that spacing out the rolling mass of your wheel and tire combo will put undue stress on your wear components, ball joints, hub assemblies, steering linkage. Realistically, it is an arbitrary argument of whether or not off-roading or wheel adapters will cause more stress. Regardless, how we use our Jeeps causes stress, and therefore it kind of becomes subjective to the individual who's actually doing the mod. The reality check behind this modification is, again, you get what you pay for. Expensive isn't necessarily better, but alternatively, cheap spacers may cause problems or fail prematurely. Additionally, improper installation could cause vibrations or catastrophic failure at speed. So I do recommend that you follow appropriate installation instructions and do your best to learn from those who have come before you, not just kind of go about this willy-nilly, instead kind of ensuring that they are properly installed, torqued, possibly using some form of chemical thread locker in the process. And once they are torqued to spec, not messing with that, and instead ensuring that they are appropriately torqued and wearing well with frequent maintenance and visual inspections. Number 7, winch. There is hardly a modification that you can do to your Jeep that doesn't speak louder than having a winch mounted to the front of it. It simply says, I'm here for serious business. Or at least that's what the general takeaway of having said apparatus on the front of your Jeep. People perceive you to be ready for recovery at any point in time because theoretically you should be. But there is a vast majority of people who simply hang a winch on the front of their Jeep and never even hook it up, or if it is hooked up, it's kind of willy-nilly. And ultimately, it is there as a representation of what the Jeep life can be. So while this piece of critical recovery gear offers a ton of functional and practical value to your Jeep ownership experience, realistically, it's become a little bit of a status symbol. Hence why the proverbial race to the bottom of price point and availability of winches has created a market of highly affordable recovery gear. A winch appropriately affixed to the front of your Jeep screams, I am here for rugged individualism and adventure. But how many times a year do people actually get their Jeep stuck enough where they need to do a self-recovery with a winch? Now, that is wholly hypothetical, and regardless of that conversation, the Jeep community almost always offers this up as one of the top modifications that Jeep owners should prioritize. And while I totally agree, I think there is a huge grouping of individuals out there who just simply have them hanging out on the front of their Jeep as a status symbol. Now, I'm not discrediting you if you have it there and you have used it for lawn and landscaping, or you've simply pulled a trailer sideways out of a muddy, murky mess. They have a great utilization, and Jeeps are like the ultimate multi-tool of the auto industry. I can appreciate that. But again, on a functional ranking, winches are the ultimate in self-reliance. Appropriate winching can basically get you out of 99% of sticky wickets you may find yourself precariously drawn into. Additionally, you then become the insurance policy for yourself and your closest 5 to 10 friends who don't have winches on their vehicle. There is hardly any other modification that immediately makes your Jeep so trail ready. Basically, you can take a bone stock off the dealership parking lot, put a winch on it, and you're ready to conquer 60% of trails from coast to coast. So while this modification speaks volumes to your ability to off-road, it conversely does add weight and another maintenance item to your vehicle. Additionally, it does require thoughtful installation. We have been privy to a number of people who have routed their primary power cable across sharp or jagged components of their bumper, grille, or engine bay. And realistically, since this is an unfused large gauge wire, the possibility for catastrophic electrical issues is high. So if you are going to have a winch on your Jeep, ensure that it is installed properly and reasonably do it for the right reasons. I am all about your money, your Jeep, but if you are simply doing it to look the part, I would encourage you to potentially pursue a different modification and use your funds in a more valuable manner. As a pro tip, most Jeep owners are going to be looking between a 9,000 and 12,000 pound rated winch. I like synthetic cable, but there is a time and a place for both. I fully recognize that. Additionally, as a new school aficionado, I appreciate reliable remote controls. While it was commonplace to stand outside and off to the side of your Jeep while winching, there is absolutely a time and a place for an individual to be sitting behind the driver's wheel with their remote appropriately and safely winching. The downside to that is, of course, the potentiality for breakage in the line of the winch path, but ultimately, there is always a give and take in the process of recovery. Number 6, regearing. Regearing your Jeep is a personal favorite modification of mine. I have loved gears and axles for about as long as I have been involved in the industry. Now, there is no greater way to immediately make your Jeep feel like it has more horsepower after you have upgraded your tires and wheels and potentially made your Jeep heavier with armor or overlanding gear. Regearing allows you to add or restore mechanical advantage to the originally engineered power band of your vehicle. Now, realistically, this is applicable to all vehicles and not just the Jeep community. But realistically, since our Jeeps are limited in the horsepower that we can authentically derive from our powertrain, gears make the biggest difference in our user experience. While bigger tires and added weight throw off our Jeep's originally engineered power band, there is no greater or faster way to bring that back to center and optimize your vehicle's original power band. The reality of gears is that they are not a particularly DIY friendly job. They require a lot of specialty tooling to be done well. Additionally, if you're looking for long-term usability and serviceability, you may want to have some prior experience before endeavoring into this modification. Now, with that said, it's not impossible. There are a lot of resources out there, and with enough determination, there are some DIY friendly installs, and theoretically, there are plenty of social groups and individuals out there willing to help you get yourself in trouble, and you can be successful in this process if you so choose. Meanwhile, there are a number of pro shops out there who make a living doing quality, long-term, reliable installations. And of course, it would be our recommendation that you pursue that if your intention is to have this modification last a long time and be used in kind of an aggressive off-road capacity. Gears are like engine work. It is not something that should just be done willy-nilly. Instead, it needs to be done with some thought and care on not just the initial installation, but the long-term utilization. As a pro tip, our recommendation is, as always, you get what you pay for. There are less cheap gears available now than there were 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, at least, there was a saturation of economy line gears. They tend to be noisy and set up harder. If you are a DIYer, I recommend that you put the money out for a good quality set of gears. That will reasonably ensure that you have a successful experience. Also, this is the time to add a traction device. So regardless of whether it is a limited slip differential or a true locker, our recommendation is to make the best use of your labor and kill two birds with one stone and pair your gear set with an appropriate traction device for the long haul. My pro tip is, if you're going to pay for professional installation of your gears, this is the time to bundle that installation with a limited slip differential or full locker. Regardless of the traction device you might choose, doing this will ensure the best value for your dollar, and a professional installation ensures that you have the confidence now and in the future when you're using that Jeep on or off road, and even when you subject it to mild or wild abuse, that there is some form of checks and balances, and ultimately you have a professional business you can work with to ensure that you have a good experience for your ownership of that Jeep. Number 5, hybrid tires. Now, if you're not familiar with this term, it is arguably kind of new. Hybrid tires is a tread and compound design that has become popular within the last 10 years. It seeks to fill the gap between an all-terrain and mud-terrain tire. Normally, it features a tighter center tread pattern with a more spread out and more aggressive shoulder lug pattern. This combination attempts to merge the on-road comfort of an all-terrain tire while allowing for greater clean out and sidewall traction of a off-road and mud tire. On a functional level, these tires tend to have lower road noise than a traditional MT or mud terrain, and may be better in wet or wintry conditions, but they will still offer solid traction in the rocks or the mud, whereas an AT might load up and need high RPMs to spin them out and clear out the tread pattern. The reality check of hybrid tires is that they are a little new, and your local installation shop may or may not be familiar with them. Additionally, they have some new names, and so they're not as well known as other tires on the market. They also don't have as aggressive tread, and so therefore in some of the more rugged or aggressive terrains, a mud tire or a specialty design tire may be better. So while there might be advantages or disadvantages to ATs and MTs, hybrids trying to toe that middle of the road line are typically a pretty good choice. Regardless of the tires that you choose that are going to be best for you, ensure that they have proper air inflation. When in doubt, call the manufacturer, see if they can help you through a customer service piece regarding utilization on your vehicle. Specific manufacturers who cater to the off-road industry, like Mickey Thompson, do this free of service when you have purchased one of their vehicles. Otherwise, check out one of our videos on the chalk test and ensuring that you have an appropriate footprint for the utilization and weight of your vehicle per this kind of generally accepted standard. While I love hybrid tires, they're not for everybody. They have their place in the industry, and while they are a bit of a buzzword right here and now, you may run into obstacles in ordering or procuring these tires with your local tire shop because they just might be too new or the information be lacking to ensure that that business can facilitate the sale and installation of the tire for you. You may need to do a little bit of education, not just for yourself, but for them in the process of appropriately procuring them and installing them on your rig. Number 4, armor and skid systems. Now, again, a personal favorite of mine is in general a low center of gravity build. When coupling limited lift height with off-road obstacles, the potential for undercarriage damage increases. So therefore, skid systems and underbelly armor is vital. I love the introduction of fully aluminum skid systems that are robustly constructed with an appropriate expectation that you are going to be dragging the underside of your Jeep over obstacles. There's a number of manufacturers like Artec and Rock Hard 4x4 and Next Venture that offer really well engineered systems in full aluminum offerings that will keep your Jeep safe while performing in a lightweight manner. Now, conversely, there are part and piece skids that you can buy onesie twosie. Realistically, we have been doing that for decades with a number of other manufacturers. And within reason, I'm not going to talk anybody out of isolated armoring or skidding of their undercarriage based on their budget or product availability. Just because I didn't name a manufacturer does not necessarily mean I do or don't recommend their skid system. Within reason, I like all skid systems, and I think that many of them have advantages and disadvantages. Steel systems are not inherently better or worse than aluminum. I could do a whole video on that. This is simply about the skid systems in general and what you, our viewer and Jeep community, believes is a valuable modification. I agree entirely with you. Budget permitting, I recommend that you attempt to buy a full skid system as opposed to onesie twosie, specifically because many of the manufacturers have engineered their Under Armour skid systems to be installed kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, giving you the best protection and rugged utilization of that armor. While not everyone can afford to go out and buy a couple $1,000 skid system, something is going to be better than nothing. So I do recommend that you protect the most vital components, potentially the evap canister, battery, coolant lines, or engine oil pan that you can in the process. The only real downside to this is that it can be added weight to the vehicle. So again, if we're talking about that gearing or tire wheel piece that we just said, you're going to want to consider this in your decision-making process. Also, these skids can trap dirt and mud and debris up in vital parts of the drivetrain. And so if you are a person who finds yourself frequently in mud pits, you're going to want to have a conscientious approach to cleaning and servicing your vehicle so that you don't create premature wear to vital parts and pieces that otherwise are currently being protected by those skid systems. As a pro tip, opt for frame or structurally sound mounting options. early model Jeeps oftentimes had kind of a Mickey Mouse-esque attachment points. And so while the skid itself was fairly robust, it actually mounted to the oil pan itself or to the diff cover. And ultimately, after a number of impacts, this can actually loosen up those seal surfaces and create leaks where you don't want them to be. Or on a rare occasion and a severe impact, you can actually create damage to some pretty vital parts. So choose how that skid system attaches wisely. And while this might seem like it is a fairly DIY and straightforward mod, if you have some type of elaborate suspension modification like a long arm or some other form of unforeseen modifications that skid manufacturer didn't know about, you may find yourself doing some home-brewed backyard engineering to ensure that the mount locations and the skids fit together the way that they were originally designed to do. Number 3, sway bar disconnects. This is a pretty straightforward and simple modification that many DIYers can confidently do and have great success with. Sway bars have on-road advantages, giving you a greater sense of stability while cornering and limiting body roll in on-road maneuvers. Especially for our high center of gravity rigs, think rooftop campers or other overlanding gear mounted above the cab. Sway bars have a distinct advantage when they are appropriately installed and used for on-road. Now, in off-road situations, they can actually hinder your rig's ability to articulate and maintain traction in off-camber situations. Sway bar disconnects are not all created equal. Again, you get what you pay for. Our recommendation across the board are the JKS quicker disconnects, and when they're appropriately installed and maintained, should provide a nice long life and utilization under your rig. Now, Jeep engineers understood the value of disconnecting the sway bar so much that when the JK Rubicon model was released, they actually included an electronic sway bar disconnect option. This was awesome because it was the first time a off-roader didn't have to get out of their vehicle and physically disconnect their sway bar. Instead, with the push of a button, cogs released internal to a motor mounted on the sway bar, allowing it to move independently side to side, allowing the suspension to fully absorb the different obstacles that the Jeep encountered on the trail. Now, there were a number of safeguards engineered into this. You had to be in for low. These systems weren't necessarily perfect, and they had a propensity to wear out or have electrical failures. Now, that's not to say that they weren't worth their money, and if you are a Rubicon owner from roughly 07 to present, you know what a nice amenity these might be. Regardless, disconnecting your sway bar has advantages. And so it is worthy of being on this list because you, the viewers, deem it so. You understand how much benefit it provides you in your off-road experience. Improper installation of disconnects can lead to failure, noises, and in general challenges when you later go to disconnect or connect them. They can be cumbersome and slightly problematic if you are not exactly sure what you're working with. Additionally, the electronic units can be prone to malfunction, and they're very costly to replace when and if the time comes. This is absolutely hands down one of my favorite off-road modifications. If you do nothing else to your suspension and you do this, it's going to make a difference that you can feel when off-roading. If disconnecting doesn't sound good to you, there are a number of options via a torsion bar system that seeks to create a happy medium between fully connected and disconnected. In general, those can have a higher price point than standard disconnects. Overall, this ability to know and modify your sway bar in whatever fashion speaks to you definitely is deserving of being on this list and is a great entry-level modification that all off-road enthusiasts should be doing. Number 2, non-fluff steering upgrades. If I've said it one time, I've said it 100. Steering is oftentimes one of the most overlooked upgrades done in the off-road industry. Everybody gets really excited about tires and wheels and lift kits and lights and even armor and fender flare stuff, but making steering matter to the average user can be challenging. With that said, not all steering is created equal, and a number of manufacturers have jumped out to the front of the pack. Now, a lot of these manufacturers use elaborate marketing schemes to draw people in and kind of create some pop or pizzazz when it comes to their steering system. Our contention is just do anything that is more robust or upgrading your stock components when they eventually wear out. I honestly believe that many JL and JT components are actually pretty good in their design right here and now, and you can get a nice long lifespan out of them if you're not abusing the steering system. Abuse is how hard am I cranking on it when I'm off-road, and am I running it into some type of obstacle either on or off-road, and or am I appropriately working with it when I'm doing other modifications, like I'm not using a pickle fork or some other form of vice grip or something else to damage the steering in that manner when being serviced. So as long as we're not doing that, seeking a high quality upgrade is super valuable and will make a difference in your user experience. In fact, I recently had a customer share with me that they couldn't believe how much tighter and responsive their steering was simply because we added an appropriate aftermarket tie rod to their steering assembly. And that little modification alone made a difference for them as the occupant and driver of their Jeep. When upgrading steering, that's going to include your drag link, your tie rod, an appropriate but not overpriced steering stabilizer, and it can include a track bar. When you're combining that entire grouping of parts together, this conglomeration of steering componentry is darn near guaranteed to make a difference in your enjoyment on and off road. Don't skimp on this and don't buy into the hype. While there's a lot of good manufacturers here in the middle, my recommendation is to do your research thoroughly and consult a professional shop or the manufacturer themselves to make your final determination about what steering system will be best for your needs. Steering is what keeps you connected to the road and the trail. Don't skimp. Another friendly piece of advice or tool for your toolbox is to take an appropriate permanent paint pen and create timing, torque, or hash marks that will allow you to quickly visually inspect your components and ensure that they are still in the appropriate torqued position that they were prior to you doing whatever obstacle or trail ride you've recently done, and you can quickly get under the vehicle, visually inspect it, and move on to the next portion of post-wheeling maintenance necessary to keep your rig in good condition. Number 1, tires and wheels. I know it's not the most exciting subject, but it is arguably what you all talk about the most. And so it is deserving of being, within reason, the number 1 modification that you have done to your Jeep and that we believe is functional and appropriate. Tires and wheels satisfy our human need for immediate gratification. There are very few modifications that you can do to any vehicle that can ultimately and immediately change the visual representation of that vehicle. If you log on to just about any social page, video, Reddit, forum, whatever, people are talking about tires and wheels. We as a society both love them and hate them. And additionally, they're going to make or break your user experience. On a functional level, an appropriately installed and fit set of wheels and tires can increase your on-road and off-road traction. An appropriately installed and fit to your vehicle set of tires and wheels can have massive positive effects on your ownership of your Jeep. Now, if you're not getting out of your Jeep as you walk to the store and turning back and looking at it lovingly, then you're doing something wrong. Tires and wheels will help you with that process. It's kind of one of those funny things that people will obsess over and dream about the exact right looking wheel and tire combination. Now, cheap tires are not good tires. And that is just the most appropriate rule I can leave you with. Ultimately, all our wheels in general are kind of on a normal or standardized level these days. And if you want to know more about how we feel about wheels and tires, there's a multitude of our videos or podcasts that you can follow that break down these components. Bigger isn't necessarily better. And take that from a guy who openly suffers from inchitis. I love big, massive, gnarly tires. But realistically, they can have on-road handling issues, be hard to balance. They may be hard on the additional wear components of your suspension and steering. And realistically, without a lot of appropriate foresight when designing your suspension, they might contact the body or impede your articulation off-road to the point that it diminishes your user experience. So bigger isn't necessarily better. While I mentioned most wheels are created equal by today's standards, there is obviously massive ebbs and flows to that industry as well. So long as you're choosing a quality name brand, the likelihood is you're going to have a good experience regardless of what the wheel is. That manufacturer is taking some responsibility for the construction simply by putting their name on it, and so choose wisely in that process. As I mentioned previously in this list, air pressure is key to your enjoyment. So either call the manufacturer or check out our chalk video. Use some form of calibration tool to change the parameters of your TPMS sensors so that you don't have lights on your dash, and rotate your tires and wheels often so that they don't develop poor tread memory and that your Jeep does not suffer from premature wear of components because tires and wheels develop this weird memory and then negatively affect other things. Routine rotation of those tires and wheels ensures the best value for your dollar, and that wheel and tire combo that you obsessed about and dreamed about lasts the longest possible for your enjoyment. All right, folks, that's our top 10 based on what we believe you, the people, have shared are the most important modifications that you have made to your Jeep. As I mentioned, I'm on all of these social pages and I love hanging out in there and having conversations with other Jeep enthusiasts, or trying to learn and share in the process of what is important to you and how it has affected your Jeep ownership. So, do you agree or disagree with this list of 10 items? Are they the 10 items and modifications that have been important to your Jeep ownership? Has one of them been more, better, or worse than another? Do you have something that I didn't include and you think should be? Let us know in the comments below. As always, you are a valuable part of our growing YouTube family, so we need you to like and subscribe and to ring that bell so that you get notified about other great Jeep content. Until next time, Jeep on.